Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 4, Episode 62. We're going to be talking about Super Bowl 54, previewing that matchup, which is coming up on Sunday, and all the great things to look forward to in that game, plus a little bit of stuff going on around the NFL, as there always is this time of year. Some stuff going on with the Steelers, but it is appropriate, of course, to lead off with the tragic news of the passing of Kobe Bryant and 8 others from a helicopter crash from last Sunday, and really just an event that shocked not just the sports world, but really just the world in total. It felt like, at least to me, as though time almost stood still, and everyone was just in shock and mourning, and I honestly can't remember a time like this in the sports world where it really felt like the world just stopped to mourn the loss of not just a generational talent in Kobe Bryant, but also a wonderful person and really an icon. And I think that term gets thrown a lot around, maybe a little more than it should. But Kobe Bryant really was one of those types of people, and he had just an amazing impact on the sport of basketball and the whole Mamba mentality thing. Really is a great way to look at life, and it was really just shocking more than anything. And I remember you called me to break the news to me, and I couldn't believe it, and I'm sure that was a similar reaction to just about anybody. There really aren't words to sufficiently explain or understand what happened. It's really just tragic.
It was so sad. I'm not a basketball fan. John, I don't believe you are much of a basketball fan either, but it's still like you said, shocked the world. It was just something so tragic. And it just went from no, this has got to be a joke. Someone made a really bad, shitty article to troll everyone and be just hurt people's feelings and stuff. But then as time went on, it started to get real and just kept getting worse. At first it was only 4 people, then 4 people went to 5, then 5 went to 9 people, and it was tragic. Kobe Bryant was just one of them. The pilot also died. It's Kobe Bryant's daughter, Gianna, or Gigi, also unfortunately died along with one of her teammates. One of her teammates is both of their parents, and I forget the last person, but I believe it was another teammate parent. Yeah. But it was just such an unfortunate and tragic event that we thought we should mention on here because it did shock the entire world. This is such a big loss for the sports world.
Yeah, and like you said, Austin, neither you or I are really big basketball fans. I've only been kind of a casual observer. In fact, I wouldn't even consider myself a fan of basketball up until about 8 or 9 years ago. There was a brief stretch where I watched pretty regularly for a handful of years, but since then I've kind of only been a casual observer. But everyone knew who Kobe Bryant was, and he really was kind of like the Michael Jordan to a generation of people. He was the guy that carried the torch for basketball. Once Michael Jordan retired, he was the guy, and there's really nothing you can say to fully understand this tragic event, and it gets so much worse when you learn that his 13-year-old daughter was with him, and then there were, in addition to that, there were 7 other people whose lives were lost, and it's one of those things where you just, I don't know, it really just is a terrible thing. And I guess it just makes it makes everyone kind of reflect, and we're not constantly, but we're every now and then we're reminded of just how precious life is and how important the moments we have with people are, because in an instant it can be taken away. And just the day before, we were celebrating LeBron James passing Kobe Bryant on the all-time scoring list, and a day later he's dead. And it's one of those things. Sometimes you never see it coming, but it still happens nevertheless. So make sure you cherish the moments that you have with loved ones, with really everybody, because again, it can come up short. I know, like I was just saying, I wasn't a big basketball person, but Kobe Bryant was still someone that you knew. Did he mean anything to you outside of he was a great athlete? Because he wasn't someone that particularly impacted me, but I know that people around me that I knew, he had a huge influence on a bunch of them.
It's hard to put into words because I don't. The answer to your question is somewhat no, but it's just kind of like, because I never watched basketball, but like you said, I still know who Kobe was, and it was still a big deal. Like, you just, when you're like 8 years old, you're just shooting a piece of paper that you rolled up into the trash. You're like, Kobe. Like, you just like always did it. Like, it was just like part of you, and you grew up with him, and you grew up knowing he was one of the best, and knowing he was probably top 3. And it's just, I don't know. I wouldn't say he had like any major implication on my life other than a sports person, but it was just kind of crazy still, and just I don't know. It's hard to put into words for me.
It definitely is, and I just, again, it's kind of like what you said. It was hearing the news and just thinking, no, like it couldn't actually be him. I don't know. It's just there really is. I'll probably never be able to come up with the words to fully make sense of what has happened, but a truly tragic event where 9 people lost their lives, and countless people were affected by it. One, I guess, I don't know if I'd call it I don't know if it would be a good thing to say, or a good thing to call it, but I did think it was pretty remarkable how it felt like everyone, not just sports fans, not just basketball fans, but just people who, again, weren't even big into sports. It felt like the entire world stopped and everyone came together to mourn this man and everyone else that had passed away. And I guess in that sense, it was, I don't know if calming isn't really the right word for it, but I thought it was kind of interesting to note that it felt like everyone, no matter what, came together to celebrate this man's life. And to know that he had that powerful of an impact on everyone really is just, it's just kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's just several people. Like in my life, my mom was interested. My mom cares about zero sports at all, and she was upset by it. Same with my girlfriend. Same with my sister. They had no interest in sports at all. And they were still upset by this because it's just sad. And at the end of the day, it's just sad. It's a loss of life. And keep all their families. If you pray, keep them in your prayers. If you don't, keep them in your thoughts. Just because obviously a lot of these families are going through struggles right now, Vanessa Bryant and the other daughters, and the other family, because obviously 2 other children got widowed by this event, which is incredibly sad. Not widowed, I'm sorry, orphaned, wrong word. But just keep them in your thoughts and or prayers.
And it's really impossible to segue into something that pales in comparison, but once again, just make sure that you take advantage of the moments that you have in your life, because again, it's easy to take things for granted. With that being said, let's move on to other stuff that's going on this week, and of course that's the Super Bowl 54 that's coming up on Sunday, just 2 days away from when we're recording right now. We've had almost 2 weeks to think about this now. I still think since the last time we talked, I still think pretty similarly to how I felt before. I think this should be a pretty good game, but I think we still got two of the top 5 teams in the league, and I'm happy with the Super Bowl we got.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. I was still rooting for the Titans 49ers more just because I thought the Titans were a wonder team, but Chiefs 49ers is actually probably the best game that we could have gotten, if that makes sense. I was rooting for Titans versus 49ers for personal reasons, but this is probably the best game we could have got.
Where would you like to go from here? There's a few Steelers notes to get to. We could get into the game itself, or we could talk about other stuff going on in the NFL. Where do you want to go from here?
I want to start with the game. We'll start with the Super Bowl, and then we'll talk about the Steelers stuff and then the NFL stuff, because Steelers stuff is all small.
Okay, then. Well, let's start with the injury reports. Luckily, both teams, as is the case with the Super Bowl, you have an extra week to prepare. So some guys have been able to get a chance to get healthy. So the 49ers had 3 players listed on the injury report. All 3 of them were limited participants on Wednesday and Thursday, and they all practiced in full on Friday. So it looks like all 3 of these players are ready to go. That being Quan Alexander, the linebacker, running back Tevin Coleman, and safety Jaquiski Tart. That's one of my favorite names in all of sports. So it looks like they'll all be a go. And then on the Kansas City Chiefs side, they had 4 players. All 4 of them were full participants in practice all 3 days, so they're all going to go, being defensive lineman Chris Jones, tight end Travis Kelce, center Austin Reeder, and Deion Yelder, a tight end with an Achilles injury. So all healthy on the injury front. That's what you want to see going into a Super Bowl.
Yeah, when your team is not in it, you just want to see the best battle you can get. And when both teams are banged up. This is what happens. This is the Super Bowl. There are definitely guys that are injured playing in this, and these guys that practice with their designations and stuff, they're not 100%, but like this is as best as you're going to get. They're going to play in the Super Bowl, and that's what you want.
All right, let's take a look at the 2 contestants and how they got here. Let's start with the NFC champion San Francisco 49ers. They finished 13-3. They were the top seed in the NFC. They had a pretty darn good offense. They finished 4th in the NFL in total yards, 2nd in points, 2nd in rushing, and they were 13th in passing yards. And on defense, they were darn near elite. They finished 2nd in yards against, 8th in points against, 1st in passing yards against, and 17th against the run. In the playoffs, they manhandled the Minnesota Vikings 27-10 in a game that didn't feel nearly as close as that. The Vikings got pretty much a third of their yards on one drive alone, their 1 touchdown drive, and were largely quiet for the rest of the game. And then in the NFC Championship game, they dismantled the Packers and absolutely ran the ball down their throat. Jimmy Garoppolo attempted, I believe, 8 passes in another game where the score didn't quite reflect the total beatdown that the Niners issued the Packers in a 37-20 win. The Niners pushed their record to 15-3 in total on the year. They played in a few close games this year. They've won in a lot of different ways. They've won close games, close defensive struggles. They've won blowouts. They've won in high-scoring games. They certainly are one of the teams that at midseason you thought could make a run at the Super Bowl. So it's not all that surprising to see them here. I thought when they were the last team standing this season for undefeated records, which by the way is insane considering where they were a year ago, I thought that they'd be one of the 2 teams that I figured could make it from the NFC. The Saints were the other team, and I obviously picked the Saints to win the Super Bowl. So those were the 2 teams I figured would make it from the NFC, and so I guess I was kind of right.
Yeah, without a doubt, because the 49ers were one of the better teams. They actually fell off for me after that, though. As soon as they lost, it felt like they lost like a bunch in a row, and it felt like they were coming down and teams were figuring them out. But they finished the season strong and were able to blow out some good teams in the process. I mean, we watched them blow out the Packers like early on in the year, too. The Packers didn't adjust. And this probably should be mentioned in our NFL news, but the reasoning for the Packers, what they gave was so stupid. I don't know if you saw it, but they said we just weren't ready for games on the West Coast. Like, it was just like, I was like, wow, where do I know that from? But regardless, it was so stupid. Like, we were unprepared. We didn't have enough time because the games are on the West Coast. I was like, that is so dumb. I can't believe you admitted to that. That's the reason. I forget who said it. It was someone high up in the Packers organization, but regardless.
Sounds like a cop-out.
Anyhow.
Stupid.
What's up?
Sounds like a cop-out. That's stupid.
Yeah, basically is a cop-out, but regardless, anyway, they put up a high-scoring affair, like you mentioned, with the Saints. That Saints team was great, and I was hoping for another rematch of that. Unfortunately, the Saints just really choked this year really, really bad. I feel like the Saints are like the new Cowboys, man. Like, I feel like it's their new thing to, like, choke and then just blame the refs. But regardless, tangent again, now I've gone on to about other teams other than the 49ers. But they also put up good games against Seattle, who is a playoff team. They put up good games against a bunch of other teams and were able to finish the year strong. So it makes sense that they were able to get here.
The Steelers, as we know, saw them early on in Week 3. That was before we realized how good the Niners were. They've got one of the best defenses in the league with a fearsome front four and a pretty darn good secondary. And their offense, even though it's not a spectacular passing game, they do have talented weapons at receiver. They've got probably the best tight end in the league And what do you think of Jimmy Garoppolo? You don't have to get a ton into it right now, but just your thoughts on the Niners in general right now as far as their personnel.
I think Jimmy Garoppolo is okay. I think that's where I'm going to go with. I think Jimmy Garoppolo kind of, I don't know who he reminds me of, but I think he's okay for now. I don't think he's great. I think people are overblowing because he's a Super Bowl quarterback. We've seen some pretty bad Super Bowl quarterbacks in the past. And so I don't think that him making it to the Super Bowl makes him immediately like, oh, he's great, oh, he's top tier. Like, I'm pretty sure I could put him in top 12, but I'm not exactly like, I think he's okay. I think he's above average, and I don't think he's anything special. He's not like Patrick Mahomes.
And speaking of Mahomes, let's look at the other side, the AFC champions. Led by Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs finished 12-4 this year. They were the second seed in the AFC playoffs. They finished with a high-flying offense, 6th in the NFL in yards, 5th in points, 5th in passing yards, 23rd in rushing. Or wait a minute, that's not right. I have the wrong figure there. I'll have to double-check that. But I know they finished 23rd in rushing yards. And then on defense, this is a unit that struggled mightily last year, as you might remember. They struggled a bit early, but did kind of right the ship at midseason. They did finish 17th in yards against, 7th in points against, which is pretty good, 8th in passing yards against, and 26th against the run. In their 2 playoff games, starting with the divisional game, we saw one of the strangest games in recent memory where they faced a 24-0 deficit and then went on to outscore the Houston Texans 51-7 after that, and what ended up being a 20-point blowout where after the first quarter it looked like the Chiefs were going to be blown out themselves. That was a very interesting game, and then a week later, the Chiefs were able to slow down King Derrick Henry and the Titans as they only mustered 24 points, while Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs railed up 35 more points en route to the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes has, I believe, 11 touchdowns. Is it 11 touchdowns without a pick in his postseason career? And I believe one more would make an NFL record.
I believe that's correct. I definitely know he has 11 touchdowns in the playoffs before he's 25. I've seen that stat. I didn't see the interception stat, though.
I'm pretty sure he has not thrown an interception. I could be wrong. I'll have to double-check that. But when looking at this Kansas City Chiefs team, this is one that was picked as a Super Bowl favorite at the beginning of the year. They lost a couple of games early on in the season that had them fall out of favor with a lot of people. They lost Patrick Mahomes for a few weeks due to injury, and they kind of flew under the radar. They started winning games. They put things together mid-season, and they quietly flew under the radar, and that may have been the best thing for them, along with the fact that their defense turned it around. What do you think about the Kansas City Chiefs 2019 season?
Something I want to say about that, where they rank in stats: 6th, 5th in total yards and points and in passing, is like you said, they missed Patrick Mahomes for a few games. I believe it was only 2, but still. And then also Tyreek Hill was gone until I believe week 8. So like their offense wasn't even together fully really until like week 11 or so when Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill finally got back together. So I think this offense is even better than the stats say on paper because, I mean, they're missing a lot of their pieces. I really do like this offense. I really do like this team. I like that their defense is able to put it back together, and I think the key to their defense has been current Defensive Player of the Year candidate Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. He's been playing out of his mind. I can't believe 2 teams haven't wanted to give him a real contract yet because of his injury history. But, I mean, he should be finding a home with the Chiefs for a while now. He's playing out of his mind and helping. Him and Juan Thornhill were playing great together. Unfortunately, Juan Thornhill, the rookie, will not be playing in this game because he got hurt he tore his ACL, I believe, 3 weeks ago. But they were great together. And then Chris Jones. Chris Jones hasn't been participating as of late because of an injury, but Chris Jones is a great pass rusher, very underrated in the league, I feel like. I feel like more people talk about Frank Clark, and I don't think Frank Clark has had that great of a year, especially comparatively. But Chris Jones is a force on the line, and he is a great part of the reason why this Chiefs team is so good.
So the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers face off in the Super Bowl. You want to just, we'll step back and we'll kind of take a look at position group by position group, and we'll kind of, you and I will determine who has the edge at which position group and why. We'll go over each side, and we'll kind of make our determinations from that. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Alrighty. Well, let's start with the quarterback position, and even though this is probably a really obvious one, let's take a look at both sides. So starting with San Francisco 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. This season, Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 3,978 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. A quarterback rating of 102. That's pretty darn good. And I know you just kind of touched on it a few seconds ago about Jimmy Garoppolo this season, but I thought he put up a pretty good year, and I've been critical of him in the past. I thought that he was the most overhyped player in NFL history a few years ago, based off of the fact that he had just started, what was it, something like 10 or 12 games, something like that. Well, he started all 16 games this year and put up a pretty darn good year. Not elite, I would say. He still has some growing to do, but, he proved me wrong. So I thought he played well this year.
Yeah, he's not, like I said, he's okay, and I already spoiled it because I used a bad comparison by saying he's not Patrick Mahomes. So I do think the Chiefs have the advantage here at the quarterback position. But it's just, Patrick Mahomes is just so good. He's going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league for years to come. At least I hope. At least I think. It seems like it. I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. It's going to be really fun to watch unless you're playing him, and I'm sure by the end of his career, which has been very short, it'll be a good one. But right now, he's balling. He's playing out of his mind, and he's great. So it's not even disrespectful to rank Jimmy Garoppolo behind him, because I think Patrick Mahomes could be the best quarterback in the league. His stats were comparable with Russell Wilson's and Lamar Jackson's, and he had missed a few games when Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson did not. So he is definitely up there for one of the top quarterbacks in the league. He's definitely top three. There's no way you could put him outside the top three, in my opinion.
I actually think he could make an argument that he's one of the best players in the league, period. And again, he missed 2 full games. He essentially missed a third game because he got injured very early in the Broncos game, which he ended up leaving in. He only threw 5 interceptions this season, and he only attempted like 100 passes fewer than he did the previous season. So he cut down on his interceptions, and even though his touchdown percentage was lower, he was still very dynamic. And we've seen the last 2 weeks that he doesn't need much to flip a game on its head, and he really is the difference maker. And Jimmy Garoppolo, while I don't feel that he is an elite quarterback, I also think that he's pretty solid, but it's quite clear that there is a significant advantage, probably the biggest at any position, I would think, in favor of the Chiefs in this instance.
Oh, without a doubt. It's like the biggest gap just because Patrick Mahomes is so great.
So with that being the case, let's give the Chiefs an advantage in a 1-0 lead in this instance. Let's look at the running backs now. So this is going to include fullbacks and halfbacks. So starting with the Kansas City Chiefs, they have a makeup of Damian Williams, LaShawn McCoy, Darwin Thompson. Am I missing anybody? Oh, there's the fullback Anthony Sherman, and there's another Williams there, right? Or is he hurt now?
I don't know. I know there's Darryl and Damian. There's Darryl and Damian Williams.
There's Darryl Williams. I can't remember if he's hurt or not, but you've got those 4 halfbacks and fullback Anthony Sherman. I like Anthony Sherman as a fullback. Damian Williams has had a pretty solid season. LaShawn McCoy's been pretty quiet. In fact, I think he's been a healthy scratch the last few games.
I believe so, too. He hasn't really been playing. He's just been, doing what coach has been asking him. And Damian Williams has been kind of going off as of late. He had, that big touchdown game against the Texans. I think he had 3 touchdowns in that game total. You include the receiving ones, but yeah.
So Damian Williams finished the year with 498 rushing yards, which led the Kansas City Chiefs. LaShawn McCoy came in second place with 465. So their running backs are by committee, and then the San Francisco 49ers, on the other hand, have a 3-headed monster in Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and Matt Breida, all 3 of whom have had big games this year. And they also have fullback Kyle Juszczyk, who is widely considered to be the best fullback in the league. And they also have Jeff Wilson Jr., who might not seem like a guy you would remember, but he did score a touchdown against the Steelers in Week 3. So they have 4 halfbacks that can carry the ball and probably the best fullback in the league. I think this is a clear advantage for the 49ers.
I have to agree. The 49ers, I said it if we could flash back to week 3 when we were previewing the 49ers and Steelers matchup, what I said about that offense, the best thing I liked about that offense was how they could use all of their running backs effectively, and they have a running back for every single situation, and they know how to use it. They don't outsmart themselves. They don't overthink it. They use the right running back for the situation, and they know how to make them go off. I've seen Matt Breida go off. I've seen Raheem Mostert go off. I've seen Jeff Wilson go off. I have seen all these guys go off. I've seen Kyle Juszczyk go off. Like, they just know how to use their guys. They know the guys they have. They know their skill sets, and they're just so good at using them. I think the 49ers have the clear advantage here. The Chiefs running backs don't really compare for me. It's just how it is. I think the 49ers win here quite clearly.
You know, it's interesting. I believe I was now with Tevin Coleman being likely to go. Who do you think is going to have whose game do you think it's going to be? Who do you think is going to emerge as the guy this week?
I feel like it changes every week. It's been Raheem Mostert for a little bit now, so I'm going to say, you know what, I'll change it up. I'll say it's going to be Breida, because I really liked Breida last year, so I think it could be Breida again for this game, but I feel like it's just been Mostert for the most part. Obviously, we saw Mostert rush for 4 touchdowns prior to this game in the NFC Championship game, but so I'll say it's going to be Breida for this one.
You know what's interesting is I was looking at some of the over-unders for receiving yards. Take the over on Kyle Juszczyk. It was 8 yards. Take the over.
Oh my God, that's it?
Yeah, now I would assume part of it's because the 49ers haven't thrown the ball much the last 2 games, which I get, but how could you? I'd take the over on that every day.
Yeah, man, that honestly sounds like a solid bet. I wonder what the payout is to that.
I'm not entirely certain, but I do remember seeing that and just being kind of taken aback by it, but I thought that was pretty interesting. All right, let's move on to wide receivers. We got some talented wide receivers here. Let's start with the Chiefs again. They've got, of course, Tyreek Hill, the burner. They've got Sammy Watkins on the other side, and then backing them up, they have Demarcus Robinson and McCole Hardman, and then beyond that, they have Byron Pringle and Deion Yelder. Those first 4 guys are all 4.5 40 guys, or really even faster than that. They're closer to 4.4 40 guys. They're all burners, and they're all scary. That
is true. The Chiefs, they really like that type of wide receiver because it works the best with Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes can just fire it downfield. They have a good system going. It usually doesn't work that way. Usually you want a nice mix of wide receivers, but they just use what works, and it works.
Tyreek Hill is the guy, but because Richard Sherman on the other side real quickly is typically stays, I believe, on the defense's left, so the Chiefs, what's going to be the Chiefs' right side of the field, do you think we're going to see Tyreek Hill move over to the left side a lot, and we'll see a lot of Sammy Watkins on Richard Sherman? The Chiefs are smart. I think that's what they do.
I honestly think that they might have Sherman move around for this game. They might. I think that the 49ers might have something up their sleeve. They're going to change it up a bit because they know that they have to play against a much faster wide receiver core than they're used to. Probably the fastest wide receiver core in the league. So I'm thinking they're going to have something weird ready for this. They're going to try some new things in the Super Bowl.
On the other side, the San Francisco 49ers have a pair of good wide receivers in Emmanuel Sanders and Deebo Samuel. The ageless wonder Sanders is going to his 3rd Super Bowl with his 3rd different team and has had a nice rebound year with the 49ers after being traded midseason from the Broncos. And rookie Deebo Samuel has come on with a really strong season. He's been very good. And they've also got a few names like Richie James Jr., Dante Pettis, Kendrick Bourne, and Jordan Matthews. But really, they're led by those top 2 guys, and they've both been pretty darn good this year.
Yeah, definitely not bad. This is a tough one. It's tough to pick on who's the better one. I think that the Chiefs win it for me in my head because I feel like over the past couple of weeks, it's just tough because they haven't had the throw. And it makes you, underrate them. Because I know how good Emmanuel Sanders has been this year. Going from the 49ers, he immediately had a great game. But I just think that Tyreek Hill is just so much more dangerous. And then Sammy Watkins is, to me, better. And then, I don't know, I feel like the Chiefs have better depth there. I feel like after Sanders and Samuel, it just gets rough. I don't like Dante Pettis. I feel like he's done nothing since being drafted, and he was like a guy hyped up about it in the offseason and stuff. I'm not a big fan of his. I'm not a big fan of Richie James Jr. I think that the Chiefs win it for me. What do you got?
I agree with you. I think the Chiefs have an advantage here simply because their depth runs deeper than that of the San Francisco 49ers. Not to take anything away from the likes of Emmanuel Sanders or Deebo Samuel, because both have been really good players this season. But that being said, I do like the fact that the Chiefs, I feel like, have a more complete wide receiver room. What did Dante Pettis finish with this year? Because I felt like I heard his name early in the year, but not recently.
I don't think I heard anything this entire year from him.
Must have been thinking of something else then. He had 11 catches. I'm willing to bet most of them came early. Yeah, he didn't have a single catch after week 9.
Yeah, I wonder if he was like a healthy scratch or something and started making him inactive because he was bad.
Oh, I remember why I recognize that name. It's because he scored against Pittsburgh, one of his 2 touchdowns this year.
You hate to see it.
Here's probably the most interesting positional matchup, in my opinion. You've got probably the 2 best tight ends in the league between George Kittle and Travis Kelce. Who do you like better and why? I know that it's positional groups, so you can include Blake Bell, Don Yelder, and Ross Dwelley and Levine Toilolo along with them.
So this is tough. It really, really is tough. And I give the edge due to injury. I would have picked Travis Kelce up until like last week. I found out that George Kittle is playing with a torn sternum, not sternum, labrum. He's been playing with it all year. And to me, like, I had to pick him because he's already a beast. It's tough, man. Like, they're both really, really good tight ends. And I think that you can make a case for either or. I think that Kittle has just been nuts. So Kittle is like the future of the tight end position here. I think I have to go with Kittle. What do you got?
Personal bias is going to play into it a little bit. First and foremost, I love George Kittle coming out of Iowa. I've been a big fan of his. I knew he was going to be a good player. I didn't think he was going to be this good, but I had a feeling he was going to be pretty darn good. And I think he is the best blocking tight end in the league, and he's just a monster out there in the patterns as well. And on the other side, I've always been more critical of Travis Kelce. I've always thought that he was more of an overrated player. I think he's been closer to a choker, typically in the playoffs. He definitely choked against the Steelers in 2016. So I have personal bias against him, so keep that in mind. But I also love George Kittle too. So I would give the advantage to Kittle, even though it is very slight because Kelce is still a very good player. So I'll give a slight edge to the Niners. All right.
I think that's fair.
Well, thank you. I don't know if it's technically fair because I'm hating on Travis Kelce.
I think it's fair. I agree. I think that Kittle's a better player. It's just Kelsey's really good. You can make the argument, but it's just like Kittle just does things that you don't really see anymore, and he's just an incredible blocker too.
All right, what about offensive lines? This one's kind of interesting.
To me, I actually have a clear favorite, and to me that's the 49ers. Part of the reason why the 49ers run game works so well is because of their offensive line. And not only that, they're a great protecting unit. They didn't give up many sacks this year. They were one of the best, and they had lost their starting tackle for like a few weeks. So I think that the 49ers have the advantage here. Not that the Chiefs one is bad, but I feel like in terms of who's the better running offensive line, it's completely more the 49ers. And I mean, granted, that might not be the Chiefs' fault since they don't run that much. Why would you if you if you have Patrick Mahomes? But I also feel like the 49ers have the advantage in pass blocking as well. So I'm going to go with the 49ers here. Who do you got?
I actually might disagree with you a little bit there, just because Patrick Mahomes only got sacked, 17 times this year. And I know he didn't play all the games, so I'm just double-checking Matt Moore. Matt Moore got sacked 8 times this year, too. So that's a total of, 17? So that would be
25.
That'd be 25 for the Chiefs, and Jimmy Garoppolo got sacked 36. Now, being Steelers fans, we know better than anyone that quarterbacks can be responsible for sacks more than offensive linemen themselves. But you have to look at this game in terms of what the team's strengths are. The Chiefs, it's throwing the ball for the Niners, it's running the ball. And the 49ers' run blocking, as Austin alluded to, is superior to that of the Chiefs. Meanwhile, I think the Chiefs' offensive line is a superior pass-protecting unit. Excuse me. Now, that being said, what is going to factor into this game more? I don't know. But I think the tiebreaker, I think I'm going to agree with you, Austin. I think the tiebreaker is actually going to be the fact that the 49ers have had injuries on the line earlier this year, and they powered through it, and they still had a really good offensive line. So I'll give another slight edge to the San Francisco 49ers on offensive line. It is close, though. Both are talented units. On the defensive side, though, let's start with the Chiefs. Got a defensive line that features both Chris Jones and Frank Clark, and they recently acquired Terrell Suggs to be an edge rusher. This is a talented group, but might be lacking depth.
Yeah, I already spoke about how much I like Chris Jones and how much I dislike Frank Clark, but those are really it for like the defensive line. Like they don't really have many other good players there. I feel like it's actually one of their weaker spots on defense this year. Maybe quarterback's a little bit worse there, but I mean quarterbacks have actually been playing fine for them this year. I feel like. Regardless, anyway, back to the defensive line. It's really just the Chris Jones and Frank Clark show, and comparatively to the 49ers have, like, an insane amount of depth at the defensive line. And, I mean, they have a rookie in Nick Bosa that's been playing out of his mind, and in his first postseason game, he played ridiculously, especially for a rookie. And they have Eric Armstead. They have just so many guys, and they have so much talent. This is a tough one. I think I'm going to go with the 49ers here because of how many more guys they have compared to the Chiefs. And I don't even like Frank Clark that much, so to me he doesn't really add much. I know a lot of other people will, but I just can't say anything great other than about Chris Jones. So I'm going to go with the 49ers here. What about you?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs have the overall best player on the defensive line, but the 49ers have better players all around. I mean, they have Dee Ford, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead just on the edge, three great pass rushers. Up the middle, they have DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas, Sheldon Day, and Anthony Zettles, another guy that comes off the edge. This is just a very deep group, and they might not be as good as Chris Jones, but they come in droves. And I think that they have probably the deepest defensive line in the league, one of them anyways, and it's the strength of this team and the strength of this defense, and it's what's carried them to this point. So give me the 49ers defensive line over the Chiefs. So another point for the 49ers. Linebacker, we have for the Chiefs, Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson on the inside, along with Reggie Ragland. And for the 49ers, they have Quan Alexander and Fred Warner. Those are their two main guys. They also have Dre Greenlaw as the will linebacker. I think I'll start off here. The Chiefs guys, I'm not super familiar with. I know of Anthony Hitchens. I know he's a pretty solid player. Damian Wilson, I've been pretty quiet with him. I'm familiar with Reggie Ragland a little bit, but none of those guys really stand out. Quan Alexander, even coming off of injury, has been playing pretty well. He's an athletic freak, and Fred Warner's had a pretty good season. So I'm initially leaning towards Niners right here.
I tend to agree with you. I really like Frank Warner, and I really like Quan Alexander. I think that overall that they have the more flashy names, and I just think that the Chiefs linebackers just aren't that great. They played well together this year, but I feel like overall the 49ers linebackers are just a little bit better.
All right, so another point for the San Francisco 49ers here. Let's move on to cornerbacks. Starting with the Kansas City Chiefs, they have Charvarius Ward, Morris Claiborne, and Bashaud Breeland, along with Kendall Fuller. Now, I think Fuller and Breeland have had really good seasons. Haven't heard much from Ward or Claiborne. So it looks to me like the Chiefs' top two cornerbacks are pretty solid, but it falls off a bit after that. The 49ers have Richard Sherman, of course, who's having a fantastic season. Akelo Witherspoon, who's been pretty good. And their nickelback, K'Wan Williams, former Pitt player, by the way, has been enjoying a pretty good season in what is his fifth year in the NFL. I think this is Niners slight again.
Yeah, this is. I thought this was going to be one we disagree on slightly because I was leaning towards Chiefs. only because I feel like Akil Witherspoon just got benched like last week because he was playing poorly, and he was asked to play special teams. So it's just like I really like what the Chiefs have been doing. I've been a Fuller fan for a while. I like him, but it's tough. Like I'd almost call this a draw. I feel like Sherman's playing really well, but he's only playing really well at his own coverage as well. Which it doesn't matter. He's still playing really well, but it just I don't know. It takes away a little bit of points in my head because he can only really play zone. I feel like for me it's a tie. I feel like I could call it a tie.
Alrighty then, you've convinced me. We'll call that a push. We'll try not to do that again, but I think you convinced me. I do like Kendall Fuller and Rashad Breeland, though. Let's go to safeties. The Chiefs have Daniel Sorensen, who's enjoying a solid season, and Tyrann Mathieu, whom you already alluded to, is having a great year. They also have one of your dudes, Armani Watts. How's he been doing this year?
Yeah, Armani Watts hasn't done anything. I'm pretty sure he's been inactive for most of his games. I mean, I think he actually, the last time we talked about this, I think he had like 2 tackles and they were on special teams. So he obviously was active for one game at least, but he hasn't been doing much.
He has 13 tackles and a sack this year, so he's mostly a special teams guy, it looks. But hey, maybe one of these days he'll get out there, because I know he was one of the guys that you were really liking a couple years ago.
Yeah, but I doubt it. You're competing with a rookie you drafted high in Juan Thornhill this past year, well, going into next year anyway, and you're competing with Tyrann Mathieu. So it's going to be unlikely he gets his shot. They obviously gave Sorensen the hat after Thornhill went down, so he's like 4th on the list.
I do like the Chiefs safeties a lot, though. Well, and by a lot I mean mostly just Tyrann Mathieu, but yeah.
I agree. He carries the group. He plays ridiculous. He has instincts that you can't teach. And I think him alone might beat the 49ers safeties just because. But I do really like how the Chiefs safeties have been playing together. So I would say that the Chiefs safeties are the better group in this game.
Yeah, because I think you could equate the Mathieu Sorensen tandem to very similarly to Minkah Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmunds, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like Sorensen isn't really that great, but he can tackle okay, and Tyrann Mathieu is insane. So pretty much exactly, yeah.
I like what I saw from the 49ers safeties, but I don't think they stood out as much. Neither of them had an interception this season.
Yeah, it's just not, they're not doing enough for me to say that they're better than the Chiefs.
So we'll go advantage to the Chiefs. Let's look at the specialists now. I accidentally closed out of the page I was trying to open. I will attempt to reopen that. Let's look at the specialists first for the 49ers. They have Mitch Wishnowsky, a punter that you looked at, and kicker Robbie Gould, and their returner is Richie James Jr., one of their wide receivers. What do you think of those guys?
I'm not exactly high on them, but I'm not really high on the Chiefs group either, so I don't know how I really feel. I wasn't high on Wishnowsky coming out because he was like a kicker/punter, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that he was like mediocre at both while doing both. I was like, well, I mean, you got to pick one, and I mean, I think he's played well for the 49ers so far this year, but Richie James Jr. doesn't do it for me, and I don't know. It's a tough one for me. What are you thinking? Let me hear what you think first, and then
I'm looking
I'll make a decision.
I'm looking at Robbie Gould's stats right now. Not too impressive. I mean, he's 37 years old. He's only making about not even 3/4 of his kicks right now. Wishnowsky has a decent average. Trying to see what his net is. The net is 41, so I mean he's having a pretty solid year. I wouldn't say it's great though, and Gould hasn't been great. I can't really think of anything outstanding with their return game, to be honest with you. I'll check the stats of Richie James Jr. For the Chiefs, though, right now, let's see. They have a longtime punter, Dustin Colquitt, back there, and they have kicker Harrison Butker. So starting with Colquitt, Colquitt's averaging just a little less in yards per punt as opposed to Wishnowsky, but he's been doing it a lot longer. And in terms of his net yards, they're actually at the exact same number. So pretty much a draw when it comes to the punting, but I'll give a slight edge to Colquitt because of the experience. as far as Butker goes. Butker is making 89% of his kicks this year, so I think the clear advantage at kicker is to the Chiefs. And then as far as the return game goes, McCole Hardman's been the main returner for the Chiefs. They did throw Tyreek Hill back there against the Texans, which was stupid because he fumbled immediately.
Yeah, that was stupid. But, I mean, Tyreek Hill had been electric in the past, to be fair to them, before he was like an elite wide receiver or considered a great wide receiver.
Hardman has averaged 9.3 yards per return on punts this year. His long was 36. And for Richie James, he's averaging 8 yards per return with a long of 32, so a slight edge to Hardman. Kick return, 21.4. Hardman, 26. So Hardman's a better returner on average slightly. And there's a draw. So there's a draw at punter, and the Chiefs have advantages. A slight one in returner and a pretty big one at kicker. So I think the Chiefs take this one.
Yeah, I think I have to agree. The Chiefs just kind of have it made here. I think the Chiefs are the better special team, so we could go with that.
All right, and finally we have coaching. So we've got probably the
honestly,
two.
Honestly, this could be the toughest one. I'm thinking this is going to be the toughest one because of how I view a lot of things here.
So we've got two of the best offensive minds in the game. The young up-and-coming Kyle Shanahan, son of two-time Super Bowl winning coach Mike Shanahan, and longtime successful coach Andy Reid looking for his first Super Bowl. Both have experienced pain at the hands of the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Andy Reid, of course, with the Eagles back in 2004, or 2005 technically, and Shanahan with the Falcons a few years ago when the Patriots had that big comeback. Both are going to be looking for their first Super Bowl, both wonderful offensive minds. Where are you leaning here? And I guess it's not just them, too, because it's also the coordinators.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what makes it really tough for me is when you take into account the coordinators. Robert Saleh has been great for the 49ers defense. He has taken this team and made them like an elite defense that aren't even like exactly great. And some guys that were considered washed up, like Richard Sherman, for example. They took Richard Sherman, said, listen, like, you might not be the greatest man coverage corner anymore, but we're going to make it work. We're going to keep you in zone for most of the year, and we're going to make you look great. And he's looked great. And he's done it well. And then the whole defense as a whole has done well, especially the defensive line. Incredible. And then what I really love about their offense is that how they use their running backs. The amazing how they are able to take their talent and use it correctly, which I think I'm just a bit jealous of. It's just how that, like, because, like, you put those running backs on other teams, they're not going to make it. Raheem Mostert was cut by, I believe, 8 other teams. It might be 9, but I'm thinking the 49ers were the 9th team that ended up keeping him. But he was cut by 8 other teams, and they weren't, like, good teams. He wasn't, like, bouncing around on the Patriots or anything like that. It was, like, the Jets, the Bears, like, a bunch of teams like that, where he could have easily made it. Regardless, these guys are probably not making another team unless they are put into this exact system. And not only are they doing okay, they're doing great. They are doing perfect, I'd even say, because they're being used correctly by their coaches. And then you go to the other side. Andy Reid's seasoned. Andy Reid has been to the playoffs. He has a lot more experience than Eric Bieniemy. I believe I said that right. I hope I did. He should be a head coach. More than him, and that's the thing, Robert Saleh should be a head coach too. The Browns are just stupid. But regardless, Bieniemy should be a head coach. And you can look at him and I'm pretty sure we're only a few years away from people saying Patrick Mahomes is a system quarterback, which is going to be hilarious when that happens. But you think about it. He was there when Alex Smith was there, right? So, and Alex Smith had his best year with the 49ers under him. And it's just Alex Smith was an average quarterback for his entire career, just like a guy. He just kind of stood there. Kind of how I think about Jimmy Garoppolo now. And turned Alex Smith into this crazy passer out of nowhere. And that makes me think of Eric Bieniemy as a higher than other people. I'm not as high on the Chiefs defensive coordinator. I do like how he's come together and taken this team to the next level again with not so great guys everywhere. But he does have like Tyrann Mathieu and stuff. This is what made it really tough for me. It's what I had like an internal debate. I think what really, really gave it to me was experience, and that made me pick the Chiefs here because Bruce Arians had been here before. Bruce Arians had been through the playoffs quite a few times. and that was just enough. But it was really tough because the 49ers staff is just really nuts. I feel like they've done well all together, taking their groups and making the best out of them. But with Binetti and with Bruce Arians, that was enough for me. I think I'll give the advantage to the Chiefs. But if you're about to say the 49ers, I could totally see an argument for it because I had to debate this in my head I had to go weigh everything how I thought of it and stuff. So what do you got here?
I actually think that you said it pretty well. I think this is probably one of the closer matchups as far as coaches goes in recent memory for the Super Bowl. I mean, there have been good coaches like McVay, Belichick, Doug Peterson lately, but I think this might be the closest one between the two.
Easily, for sure.
I'm also going to give a slight edge to the Chiefs. Even though the Chiefs' defense isn't statistically great, I think that Steve Spagnuolo has done a great job on the backside there, shoring things up and making the most with what, talent will tell you is an average defense for the most part. And, of course, we already know that Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid are two of the best offensive minds in football. Kyle Shanahan is very good himself, but I'm going to give the slight edge again to experience. And it's not like Kyle Shanahan doesn't have experience, but I don't know. I like Andy Reid's ability to scheme something up just slightly more than Kyle Shanahan. So I'm going to give a very, very slight advantage to the Chiefs here. And I think
it was tough.
It was. It absolutely was. So our final tally, we're including one push with cornerbacks. The 49ers have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the Chiefs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're finishing at 5-5, a dead even. Maybe we should have picked
Maybe
cornerbacks.
you want to go back to cornerbacks and just hash it out, give the edge to someone.
I'm willing to give the edge to the Chiefs, to be honest with you.
You want to give it to the Chiefs?
Yeah, because I do really like Rashad Breeland.
I can agree to that. I can agree giving it to the Chiefs because I like Fuller, I like Rashad Breeland. I can agree. It's just so tough because Richard Sherman has had a great year, but I feel like he can only play zone at this point. And maybe I'm thinking of too much in the game context, but playing zone in this game isn't going to be the greatest skill set to have. I'd rather be able to play man against the Chiefs with their speed, but I don't know. I think I could agree to the Chiefs winning 6-5.
Okay, so let's get our final score predictions. And now the Chiefs are a 1.5 favorite in Super Bowl 54. It's funny. You and I were talking before. You had a funny feeling about this, and I've had this in my mind for the past week and a half now, or whenever you mentioned it to me ever since then, that this has a very similar feeling to what Super Bowl 48 between the Broncos and Seahawks had. The Broncos had a historic offense, one that set all sorts of records coming into the game, and the Seahawks had the league's best defense, but everyone was talking about Peyton Manning and that high-flying passing offense. And before we knew it, it was 29-0 coming out of the second half kickoff with Percy Harvin returning a kickoff for a touchdown. And the Broncos were absolutely blown off the field. And no one thought it possible, just like I'm sure no one thinks it's possible that the Chiefs could be held to anything less than 30 points. But is it really that out of the question to think that it's possible the Niners could win this game in a blowout? I don't think that it's necessarily out of the question, to be honest with you. Even though we just went through position by position, I could still see it happening.
Yeah, like you just pointed out, we saw a historic offense get shot down by a defense that was very good, very elite, but not the best defense in history, not in the league. It was a really good defense, and that's all it took. Granted, and the Broncos didn't even have a bad defense either. I mean, it wasn't the greatest, but you still had Chris Harris, Keith Lee, you had Von Miller on that team. You have some really good pieces. Derek Wolfe, and Malik Jackson when he was good. Just a bunch of the good guys on that team, and so it was a team pretty complete. Sort of like the Chiefs. The Chiefs had a pretty solid defense. I thought the strong point of their team, that Broncos team. But their offense is insane just like that. So I wouldn't say the 49ers defense is as good as that Seahawks defense was. But it's just, I don't know. It's just, I have that feeling. And with that being said, I think the 49ers are going to win. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout. I know, like, the Chiefs, but it's just not how it works on paper all the time. You'll see, it's any given Sunday. That's the best way to put it. Any given Sunday, a team can win. And even though we might have the Chiefs outclassing them in several areas, that doesn't mean that the 49ers should come out and punch them in the mouth in those areas that even we said that they weren't that good. My final score prediction, I think it is going to be not a super high scoring affair, but pretty. I guess it is pretty high. I'm going to have it at 30-28. I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like Super Bowl 48. At least I hope not. But it's definitely a possibility. What do you got?
You know, the best way I can kind of sum up the 49ers defense is they're the best modern NFL defense. Just like the 2013 Seahawks were the best modern NFL defense at that time.
Yeah.
You know, I just can't get over what you were telling me, and despite everything that has been said, I think I'm going to take the bait, and I think I'm going to call for a 49ers blowout, believe it or not.
Oh, nice, dude. I respect it. I mean, if it happens, like, you're going to look like a god, and I'm going to feel stupid because I was the first one to propose it, I was the first one to think about it, and I didn't even trust my gut. I'm going to be really angry about it.
I'll still give you credit because I probably would not have thought of it this way because I've just had this nagging feeling in my mind the whole way. No one thought that the Peyton Manning-led Broncos in 2013 could only put up 8 points in the Super Bowl, but it happened. And I'm not predicting for a blowout that big, but I still think the 49ers are going to win by a score of 43-20. And look, I think about the way the 49ers have won football games, and it's just typically the way you win games this time of year is by being able to run the ball and by playing good defense. And how do you play defense against Patrick Mahomes? Well, quite simply, you don't let him get on the field. What's the Chiefs' biggest weakness on defense? It's their run defense, and that's the Niners' biggest strength. And both the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers knew it this year when they were playing in the playoffs. And what happened anyways? The 49ers ran the ball down their throat. So, even though I just gave a coaching advantage to the Kansas City Chiefs, I think about what needs to be done from a coaching standpoint. And I think that the 49ers, at least on offense, don't need to do as much compared to what the Chiefs' offense is going to have to do. The offensive game plan for Andy Reid is probably going to have to be a lot more exotic than Kyle Shanahan's is going to be. And I think that the 49ers, all they need to do is run if they get up a few big scores, yeah, we've seen the Chiefs can come back really quickly, but the 49ers are just so confident, and they're a team that I feel like even if they give up some points and some yards in this game, I think things will snowball. And when I think about that 49ers pass rush, it's unlike any that the Chiefs have faced, at least the last few weeks I'm thinking of here. I think it's really going to be a difference maker. And I know that the Chiefs' Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the league right now, the way he's been playing. But it's a time-tested method. Defense wins championships, and so does running the ball. So I'm going to take the 49ers to win in a 43-20 blowout that feels like it's not as close as the score indicates, quite similarly to the way the Niners have won their last two games. So both of us are going to take the Niners plus 1.5 and winning their 6th Lombardi trophy. So that's that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I kind of don't want that, but I mean, all I can think is I hope for the Steelers to win one more next year. And then they'll be back on top ahead of the two other teams at 6.
Indeed, but we are, of course, a long ways from that. Let's get into some news and notes. Where do you want to go from here?
Let's talk about the Steelers stuff, because I could go quick.
Alrighty then. The 49ers brought in former Steelers left-footed punter Brad Wing for a workout to simulate Dustin Colquitt of the Kansas City Chiefs. Pretty interesting. I didn't know. What was Brad Wing most recently doing?
I'm pretty sure he was with the Giants most recently, but that hasn't even been for a little while now.
That's
they
been
took,
like 3
Dixon
years, I
from
think.
The Broncos, so
That's
I
been
don't know
like,
what he's been up to be honest.
That's been like 3 years, I think. Brad Wing, 29 years old. He just turned 29 4 days ago.
Oh, nice. Happy birthday to Brad Wing.
Wing played his one rookie year in Pittsburgh. I remember that, 2014. Wow, that was that long ago?
Yeah, man.
Who was our punter in 20? It was Jordan Berry in 2015. Shoot. Man, Jordan Berry's been around a lot longer than I thought. I liked Brad Wing. I didn't love him, but I liked him.
Yeah.
He was an LSU guy. That's why I liked him. He had a moment in college where he celebrated on a fake punt right before he got to the end zone, and they took it away because apparently that's a penalty. I was so mad about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll show you later because now I'm thinking about it. But Wing was most recently with the Giants. He spent 3 years with them. Most recently in 2017, he was not retained after, I believe, a league-high 95 punts in 2017. Yikes.
Damn, dude.
Brad Wing. Okay. I've searched Brad Wing. It's the first thing that comes up is the fake punt. Oh, man. It was previously believed that if the Steelers cut tight end Vance McDonald within the next 7 weeks, that could factor into potential compensatory draft process in 2021. But according to Brad Spielberger of Over the Cap, he revealed that cutting McDonald will in fact not factor into the compensation formula. Just a little tidbit, but I'm starting to think more and more that McDonald is actually going to be retained simply because there's no guarantee that the Steelers are going to be able to get a tight end in the draft. And even though he did struggle last year, so did pretty much everyone else on offense, and there's really no one to replace him.
Yeah, they might at least wait till after the draft to do it if they are going to do it, because they might have to see, well, are we going to be able to get, like, someone in free agency? Are we going to be able to get someone in the draft? Like, they might wait and see, play it by ear, you know?
Indeed. And lastly, both Juju Smith-Schuster and Troy Polamalu have stated that they've reached out to Antonio Brown recently. Smith-Schuster replied to an Instagram post from Brown a couple of days ago that included Smith-Schuster in it. He asked Brown to unblock him so that they could talk, and Polamalu simply said that he had reached out to him in the hopes that he understands that he is loved. Man, what a good guy Troy is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I haven't heard much from Troy at all. Like, I feel like he doesn't talk to the media much at all, to be
really
honest.
doesn't.
So it was nice to hear from him, because he did a whole interview on stuff like how about the Hall of Fame process and stuff like that. But yeah, so it was nice of him to reach out. He obviously played with Brown for a few years, and so it was nice for him to try and say something. I hope one of them gets through. I do respect that Juju's trying to be a big man and just try and say, like, hey, dude, like, what happened, man? Like, try and maybe rebuild the bridge if there is one. I don't think he's trying to bring him back to Pittsburgh. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say, like, he's trying to mend whatever they had, because they seemed like okay, and then just, like, because Juju said it came out of nowhere. He said that in an interview recently, so I hope someone gets him out. It seems like at least the lawyer has. It seems like Antonio Brown is rebranding himself on social media. It seems fake right now, but I guess we'll have to see.
Let's move on to NFL news. The Panthers and Greg Olsen have mutually agreed to part ways. His agent for Olsen, I believe it's Drew Rosenhaus, said that he's still interested in playing and that he's going to be in communication with teams following the Super Bowl. People want the Steelers to get him already, and that's just not going to happen because he's an older, more injury-prone version of Vance McDonald. So just get that out of your head now.
And he's still going to demand a lot on the market even though he's old. People don't understand. Tyler Kroft, Jesse James, Nick Boyle all got like $6 million contracts, and you know how much they did? Basically squat. You know what Greg Olsen does? A lot. And he still can do a lot, even though he is injury-prone. So he is going to demand a lot on the market, and I'm sure teams will be interested. So it is not happening double time.
What else is going on around the league, Austin?
Well, the Browns hired Andrew Berry as GM, giving him a 5-year deal. He's now the youngest GM in the league. They snatched him up from the Eagles. He was I believe, the assistant GM over there. So now he is the youngest GM in the league.
Top CFL prospect Trey Robertson has decided to sign with the Chicago Bears after receiving 9 other offers. He's expected to get the biggest CFL to NFL payout since the Dolphins signed defensive end Cameron Wake. I didn't know Cameron Wake was in the CFL.
I did not know that either until I saw a tweet that was talking about Trey Robertson and said that this is going to be the biggest payout since the Dolphins signed defensive end Cameron Wake from the CFL. So that was a little cool little tidbit to learn.
What's going on with the Texans?
So the Texans have officially promoted Bill O'Brien to be their GM, and a position I had never heard of until I saw it when they said it. So He is their GM and Easterby EVP of football operations. Do I know what that is? No. He's going to be their GM, and I'm pretty sure that means he's going to deal with contract negotiation as well. I think that's what Easterby EVP of football operations means. Honestly, I still don't really know. I tried Googling, and it was just like, because it's not like something that's common. Like, it's just not, teams don't name an Easterby EVP of football operations. It's called something else for other teams, or whatever. The Texans, people are laughing at the Texans for this move, regardless, because they're making Bill O'Brien their GM.
Well, the Easterby thing is because I'm pretty sure he's someone in the front office.
I guess so. I don't even know.
Jack Easterby, Executive Vice President of Team. I don't know what in the world is going on. I've never heard of this Easterby guy before.
I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure they just gave Bill O'Brien a fake position because they're like, please just stay away from the GM position as much as possible. Take this fake position and we'll figure out something for GM later.
One guy that the Miami Dolphins don't want to stay away, in fact, the guy that they want to bring back, is quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. He just confirmed that he'll be returning for his 16th season. The Dolphins expressed interest in retaining Fitzpatrick, and Fitzpatrick seems to be interested in playing for the Dolphins as well. They have an early draft pick and are expected to take quarterback Tua Tagovailoa with that pick, but with him recovering from a hip injury, it's possible Fitzpatrick plays a significant portion of next season anyways. So rest assured, we have not seen the last of Fitzmagic.
It'd be good for Tua anyway. I mean, we've seen a way with the waiting for a first-round pick to develop a lot recently, but it would probably be good to just let Tua sit for a year anyway as the Dolphins continue building their team with all the draft picks they have over the next few seasons. So I am down for that, and I think Ryan Fitzpatrick played well last year, so I think it's good you bring him back. I still want him to keep up his journey. He's one of the most interesting journeyman players I've ever seen because he's played really well in certain places, and I want to keep him going to other teams and just playing well for a year and then playing bad again.
I want him to play for all 32 teams, so he needs to continue to move on. Sorry, it's time to move.
Next team, please.
So the Pro Bowl ended with a 38-33 win for the AFC. Joe Hayden had an interception. Minka Fitzpatrick nearly had that. T.J. Watt returned a fumble for a touchdown. And that concludes our coverage of the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, it was mostly overshadowed, first of all. If you already didn't care about the Pro Bowl, it was overshadowed. And it's the Pro Bowl, man. Like, who cares?
Yeah, because that was when all the Kobe Bryant stuff was breaking, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It was happening right at the same time as people are trying to figure out about the Kobe Bryant news, if it's real, if it's fake, or all that stuff. Oh, and fun fact before we get to our next bit of NFL news, there will be a Kobe Bryant tribute at the Super Bowl this year, so watch out for that.
You know, it was pretty cool. They did have a tribute for him. They had a moment of silence at the Pro Bowl for him just less than 2 hours after the news had been made official. And they actually celebrated. There was a sack, and a group of the defensive players for the NFC Pro Bowl team actually paid tribute by celebrating they all did a fadeaway jumper like Kobe Bryant did. So that was pretty cool, and they had a nice little tribute for him. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
All right, and then this is a two-parter. The first part is that former Cincinnati Bengals, Oakland Raiders, and Arizona Cardinals quarterback Carson Palmer, former number 1 overall pick in 2003, said that he wished he had held out and refused to play for the Bengals when he was drafted number 1 to them because, I'm sorry, did you say something?
No, I laughed because I didn't hear this news. I didn't see it and I didn't read it.
I need to double-check my article, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said.
Oh, that's so funny. That's actually hilarious. I didn't hear. I haven't heard that from him, but that's really, really funny, actually.
In an article from CBS, Carson Palmer claims the Cincinnati Bengals were not committed to winning. Newsflash, they definitely were not. Let's see here. That's why I wanted out. I never felt like the organization was really trying to win a Super Bowl and really chasing the Super Bowl, because that's what today's day and age is. The game today, you just can't hope you draft well and not go after free agents and you just end up in the Super Bowl. You got to go get it. So Palmer wishes that he had not had decided to not play for the Bengals and maybe force the Bengals to trade him like the San Diego Chargers did with Eli Manning and the Baltimore Colts did with John Elway back in the 1980s. So this is clearly meant as advice to Joe Burrow, who is presumed to be the number 1 overall pick to those same Bengals later in the draft this year. And Joe Burrow did say that he wants to play for a team focused on winning. That seems to be a clear shot at the Cincinnati Bengals. And for Joe Burrow, a kid from Ohio, maybe he knows better than anyone that he doesn't want to end up on a team like the Bengals. Should he consider Palmer's advice?
It's tough to say. I think that these Bengals are a little bit different than the Bengals Carson Palmer was on. It's just, I feel like it's so tough to say because, I mean, when your team is giving extensions to B.W. Webb and Bobby Hart, like, honestly, that doesn't seem like a team committed to winning. Like, if those are the free agents you get when you have the cap space to do so. But maybe I would. If I'm Joe Burrow, I'd definitely consider it. I strongly consider, hey, like, I'm going to sit out if you draft me, and I would try and see if, like, the Miami Dolphins would take me instead. But, I mean, sometimes you got to go where you got to go, and I wouldn't it's just so tough to say how it's going to pay off and stuff. It's obviously no future sight, but I think Joe Burrow should definitely consider it at the least.
Well, I've said in my draft profile of Joe Burrow that I could see his career playing out worst-case scenario very much like David Carr. And David Carr had nothing around him. He was in a bad way because he was on a terrible expansion team, and he had nothing else to help him. His career was destroyed because he played behind the worst offensive lines in NFL history. Now, of course, the Bengals' offensive line isn't quite that bad, but I will circle back to this point until he is not on the team. The Bengals purposefully signed Bobby Hart to a $16 million deal over 3 years. They purposefully gave, in my opinion, the worst right tackle since Eric Flowers money, like legitimate money. And that is evidence enough. It's all the evidence I need to think that Burrow should at least consider it. And normally I wouldn't be in favor of something like this. But knowing what the Bengals are, and you know what's crazy, Austin, is in the year that's passed since Marvin Lewis was fired, I'm actually beginning to think more and more about Bengals ownership, and I'm actually starting to think that Marvin Lewis, for all the crap that he has gotten and has deserved, at least in part, I actually think that he did a pretty darn good job with the Bengals, because as we peel back the curtain a little more, I think we learn just how bad this team is when it comes to the way it's being run. Now, time will tell how this new regime with Zach Taylor will go, but they were terrible last year. I don't think that the owner is committed to winning, and I think that Marvin Lewis actually did a better job than maybe we initially thought.
Quite possibly. I mean, the 2015 season wasn't too bad for them, but that's like 5 years ago now. It is. The owners are I think, are a problem here because I mean they're obviously not going on and getting free agents when they have the money, so. They really need to like start working on getting the free agents, like Carson Palmer mentioned. Like they weren't focused on winning, they weren't going out and getting the guys, and that's what they did last year. They didn't go out and get anyone. I mean, obviously they weren't considered to be a contender, but once Burrow comes, like you got to start surrounding him with some people here. Like I don't know, go extend AJ Green, get him back, make sure he plays, stuff like that.
I just don't see Joe Burrow being the top end type of quarterback. Like, I don't know, like people thought Andrew Luck was going to be. I don't think he's good enough to overcome bad everything else. And not that many people are, but if you don't invest in some free agents, you have to basically be perfect in the draft, and no one is, and the Bengals certainly are not. And I'm very worried that you're going to have a David Carr-like situation if you're not careful. I don't want to see this happen, personally, because I don't like this. But as an LSU fan, as a Joe Burrow fan, I wouldn't hate if he did do this. Also because, I don't like the Bengals. But, you think about it, it worked out well for the other two guys who did it before him. I would not do it, and I don't endorse it typically. But I think that this is a unique situation, and the Bengals are just that bad of an organization.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think Burrow, like I said, should definitely be at least considering it.
That being said, I think that's about all we have today.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up.
Alrighty then. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. We'll be back after the Super Bowl to break down the game, and then we'll be talking Steelers offseason. We'll get into that really quickly, and we'll ramp up our previews as the offseason goes along and we get closer to the draft. Thank you again for listening. If you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com, where we post our episodes there and on SoundCloud and YouTube. And I also have a draft profile on Joe Burrow, highlighting some of his strengths and weaknesses as a quarterback. Feel free to check that out on our website as well. Austin, thank you for joining me today, and enjoy the game on Sunday. Hopefully it is better than the game. Hopefully the game breaks out more like the one you predicted and not the one I did.
Yeah, man, I sure hope so.
Last year's game was certainly not very entertaining.
No, blowouts are never fun, unless your team is the one doing the blowing out.
So we're hoping for an entertaining game. Until next time, thank you as always, for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with Austin and John. Have a terrific night and enjoy the game.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.